Peaky Blinders, a British television crime drama created by Stephen Knight, chronicles the exploits of the Shelby crime family in Birmingham, England following World War I. The series draws aspirations from an actual urban criminal gang of the same name active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with the story kicking off in 1919 and showing the Shelby family over several years. Tommy Shelby, portrayed by Cillian Murphy, is the sharp and ambitious leader of the gang, transitioning from a decorated war hero to a prominent figure in the criminal underworld. His older brother Arthur, who battles his violent nature and war-induced trauma, serves as the gang's enforcer. Their aunt, Polly Gray, is instrumental in managing the family's business operations, while John Shelby, another of Tommy's brothers, is heavily involved in the gang's activities. John, played by actor Joe Cole, who interestingly is the brother of the actor who played Michael in the show, is a secondary character despite his prominence in the show. If we ignore Finn, the youngest of the four brothers and the one who is least featured on the show, John often plays second fiddle to Tommy and Arthur, who are usually given more plot arcs and storylines of significant importance. And as the show went on, I did feel that Tommy and Arthur sometimes felt like a duo of sorts, with John becoming less important as this series progressed. Perhaps it was a case of his arc pretty much being completed after the first few seasons, and between the brothers, Tommy and Arthur have more internal demons to deal with, and thus more can be explored with their characters. Plus, quite simply, they are just more interesting than John. That's not to say John is easily discardable, anything but, as he is an intrinsic part of the Peaky Blinders lineup, fierce and tough in spite of his youth compared to his younger brother. What he might lack in foresight and leadership abilities, he makes up for with his fearlessness and unflinching loyalty, and he's a damn sight better than later additions to the Peaky Blinders, such as the treacherous Michael. The connective tissue between the three older brothers is cemented by the fact that all three served in the war, meaning they have a shared understanding of the world, shared experiences, and a gravitas about them that the likes of Finn and Michael would never be able to relate to. He holds an interesting place in that he's old enough to have fought in the war, and to have only glimpses of youthful innocence about him, and he's mature and high-ranking enough to be involved in Shelby meetings. As he says to Polly at one point, when he was Michael's age, he'd killed 100 men and seen 1,000 die. At the same time, there is enough of an age gap for him to be uninterested when his father, Shelby Sr., shows up, whereas Arthur is emotional and tries to reconnect with his dad. When we meet John, he is already widowed with 4 children to raise. The Shelbys arrange for him to marry Esme in order to stop the Lee and Shelby family from going to war, and he ends up having 2 kids with her. She floats the idea of leaving and living simply, away from the mob violence, and though John is against the idea of the Shelbys expanding into London and Tommy offers him to leave the business, he remains loyal to the family and is integral to the rise of the Peaky Blinders. However, John's recklessness and that Peaky Blinder brazenness he has costs the family in season 3 when he ignites a war between the Blinders and the Italians by threatening Angel Changretta during a meeting. Arthur is unhappy with the way John acted, but Tommy praises him for it, noting that the Shelbys need to keep their foot on their rivals' necks to avoid losing control. However, John later stabs Angel in the eye, killing him, and as revenge, the Italians end up shooting and killing Grace. Tommy orders John and Arthur to kill both Angel's father, but also his mother, who used to be their teacher, to avoid going to New York and informing the mafia about what's happened to Angel. John is furious at the idea. Both he and Arthur protest that Mrs. Changretta is a good woman, and against Tommy's orders, they let her go. In season 4, having been pardoned for a death sentence, John lives with his wife and children in a countryside estate. It appears he is living in peace with his family away from Shelby shenanigans. However, he receives the Black Hand from the Changretta family, but is too slow to react, missing a warning call at night from Tommy, and when Thomas sends Michael to his home, they are ambushed and John is killed by Italian goons. It's a shocking turn of events, a season opener that sets the idea that no one, not even stable Peaky Blinders, are safe from the Changrettas. It also serves as some dark poetic justice, seeing as though John is the only Shelby who dies from this conflict, and really it was he who started it in the first place, with his new peaceful life with his family robbed from him due to his sins of old, his arrogance, unnecessary button pushing, and his refusal to apologize when dealing with the transgressors, coming back to bite him. Alternatively, you could make the argument that John's mercy got him killed in the end, as by sparing Mrs. Trangreta, she was able to travel to New York and inform the mafia about what happened to her family. It's interesting that if the show's creator Stephen Knight had his way, John might never have been killed off. In fact, the reason why John was written off the show was because actor Joe Cole didn't want to be in it anymore. Yep, that might come as a surprise, an actor landing a major supporting role in a mammoth hit show and wanting to leave after only a few seasons, but the actor wanted to explore other projects, and it seemed the filming of Peaky Blinders got in the way of that. As he said, he had other projects, and it was the right time to go. In a separate interview promoting the series Gangs of London, he mentioned an intriguing different reason, essentially saying that the show was focused on Cillian Murphy and he wouldn't be able to take his character far as a result. He said, "With Peaky Blinders, I never really got out of the gates in that role. It's Cillian's show, really. This show, Gangs of London, is more ensemble. It follows characters on a deep level. I've spent the last few years turning down gang-related shows because when a show does well, you get offered quite a few of them. I actually chose to leave Peaky Blinders because I wanted to explore new avenues and new characters and new stories." Cole felt Gangs of London, the first season of which is reviewed on this channel by the way, was really an opportunity to show what I can do and for the rest of the cast, what they can do. I grew up on gang shows. I grew up on The Wire. The Wire was my favourite show. Boardwalk Empire and The Sopranos are other ones. The problem for me is they're these seminal pieces of television, right? They're also American, right? Peaky Blinders is doing it in the UK now, and I think this is the one that's going to move the conversation forward. Some might interpret this as there being bad blood between the actors, but at face value, it appears Cole didn't feel there was room for his character to grow as the show was more focused on Tommy. It makes sense. In my review of the series, I mentioned that I felt Tommy, Arthur, and even Polly had interesting character arcs, but it did feel like John's development had stagnated, that his arc felt pretty much done by the time he died. Perhaps the writers found more interest with Michael and his storylines. I wonder if Cole has seen season 6 of the show. Perhaps he'd feel vindicated, as almost all the primary characters were given reduced roles aside from Tommy and Lizzie. Was it worth it? It's difficult to say as we don't know what the consequences of staying on the show would be. Would John be relegated to being a background player, or would the showrunners have done more with him? For sure, he probably wouldn't have been able to headline the gangster show Gangs of London, plus he was BAFTA nominated for a performance in a Black Mirror episode. The actor himself has no regrets, saying, "In society we're told to play by the rules and live your life a certain way. For me it was a no-brainer. I was missing out on some stuff, and I felt like I had exhausted this character. People used to come up to me and go, 'You're that bloke from Peaky Blinders.' But I'm thinking, my best work is in other stuff. There's more to me than this." Showrunner Stephen Knight has also spoken about John's death, saying, "I'm not a believer in pulling a prominent character's death out of the bag in order to shock people or to get people to talk about it, because I think it's a law of diminishing returns. I think you have to be very careful. Sometimes it's to do with the character. Sometimes it's to do with, Peaky is getting a huge amount of attention in the States and here. So our actors are being picked up for other things. When they get picked up for other things, we're not like the American system where you tie the actor in for 5 seasons from the beginning and they can't leave. All our people are free to leave whenever they want. We wouldn't have it any other way, but we have to factor that in." It's interesting to theorize on what John's role on the show would have been had he stayed on. I imagine we wouldn't have Finn getting a slightly increased role, nor the introduction of Tommy's long-lost son, Duke, in season 6, who's only in about 2 episodes but is groomed to take over the family business. Perhaps the writers would have had Finn killed by the Italians instead of John, and we might never have gotten to see Aidan Gillen play a major role as Aberama Gold, seeing as though he was pretty much called by Tommy after John's death to increase the Peaky Blinders muscle. So what do you make of John's death and the actor leaving the show? Would you have wanted him to stay on, or do you think it was a wise decision to kill him off? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more videos, and thanks for watching.